So Mr. Chaos himself, Colby Covington, who's also apparently Donald Trump's biggest supporter, brought chaos to the fight against Leon Edwards. He was pushing that pace and that work rate, and Leon just couldn't keep up. He failed to defend the cage wrestling from Colby, and he faded badly in the fight. Finally, at last, Colby Covington is now America's champ. He did it for Trump and he did it for all the first responders. And then you woke up because it didn't happen. It's cool to dream and imagine, but it just didn't happen. The main event between Leon Edwards and Colby Covington wrapped up 2 days ago from the time of this recording, and it was an unexciting fight to watch, period. This is the last pay-per-view of the year, and it ended up being probably the worst title fight of the year. There was a ton of bad blood in this fight because Colby decided to bring Leon's deceased father into the conversation, and for the record, I was rooting for Colby to win, but I don't condone what he said. I've been very vocal about bringing family into trash talk in combat, and I don't agree with it. If Leon's father was considered this and that, there's just no reason for you to try to take it there. A lot of people tried to defend Colby for what he said, which is completely odd, but I can understand it, but not in the way that you think. What Colby said just wasn't right. But in combat sports, when it comes to trash talking, where's the line? It seems like it's becoming normal for someone to attack on somebody's family in order to sell fights. Conor McGregor and Dylan Dennis have done it. It became so huge that now people are just numb to it. It shouldn't be that way, but it seems like there isn't a definitive boundary when it comes to trash talk nowadays. So for this fight between Colby and Leon, I was very excited to watch this fight. It was a clash of styles between Leon, who just beat Usman twice. Colby is considered a workhorse and very entertaining outside of the octagon, and many people thought that Leon would fold under Colby's fighting ability. So I decided to do what I did last time, which was make a prediction thread on Twitter. I did it for UFC 295 for Yuri vs Pereira, so I did it again for this fight. And if we review that thread, I successfully predicted that Leon would win, but I thought it was going to be close. I thought Colby was going to be in character for this fight like how he does in his other fights. I certainly did not expect Colby to fight the way that he did against Leon. It was almost a completely different person fighting in there with Leon. No one would have expected Colby to be timid against Leon. However, even though I didn't expect Colby's demeanor to be the way that it was, I can understand the reasoning behind it, and I'll explain why. In my thread, I had said that when this fight was first announced, I thought that Colby was the one who had everything to win the title. It was up to Leon to adjust to Colby and defend his title. However, the more I reviewed the film on Colby and Leon, the more I started to switch my prediction around, and now it's vice versa. Leon has what it takes to defend the title. What is it that Colby's going to do to take it away from him? Yes, he has pace, volume, relentless wrestling, etc., but he has to get there in order to use it. It's the same narrative as O'Malley versus Aljo. Everybody said Aljo has the best rear naked choke in MMA. Aljo is much better on the ground compared to O'Malley. Cool, but how are you going to get there? And quite frankly, Colby couldn't get there at all. And when he couldn't get there, he had nothing left. Leon was right, skill-wise, they were miles apart. But it wasn't a no-brainer that if Colby couldn't land takedowns, then he wouldn't win the fight. So let's get into the takeaways of this fight and find out why Colby looked like a shell of himself. Or not even that, he was pretty much a shadow of who we remembered him as. So the fight starts and Leon immediately puts Colby on the back foot. This threw Colby off, I know it. Why, you may ask? Because he was constantly being reactive on the back foot. Colby is known for being a front foot fighter. He's usually the nail and his opponents are the hammer. And I think we all expected Leon to be the one on the back foot for the majority of the fight, like how he did when he fought Usman. But when Leon flipped the script on Colby, he couldn't play the nail as well as playing the hammer. I said feints were going to be a key for Leon in my thread because it's going to keep Colby guessing. He's not going to close distance as easily, and at the same time, Leon can set up the strikes that he wants. But on top of that, Colby was throwing a bunch of strikes that he didn't want to throw. He was throwing these teep kicks where you can just see that he was just trying to create any kind of separation as he can. There were even moments where he was throwing these naked long uppercuts, and that was a big sign that he was extremely uncomfortable on the back foot. Colby was also well aware of what Leon had to offer. What is Leon best known for? Pound for pound, headshot, dead. And if you pay close attention, for the majority of the fight, Colby was trying to keep the fight in a closed stance. If Leon was southpaw, Colby was southpaw. If Leon was orthodox, Colby was orthodox. The reason why he kept doing this was because he didn't want Leon to line up his rear kick. In an open stance where Leon is southpaw and Colby is orthodox, then Leon can very well set up his rear kicks because there is a clear target to attack. Another thing that Colby was doing was that he chose to defend the teep kicks from Leon by blocking with his elbow. Every time Leon threw a knee feint, Colby shifted his elbow down the center. Most people in MMA like to scoop front kicks. However, Colby didn't want to do that because it leaves one side of his head exposed for a potential head kick. So that's why I think he would just rather just keep everything tight and have his hands in the right position just in case Leon does indeed go high with his kicks. In my thread, for the very first key that I put for Colby, I put entry techniques. I also said that how Colby decides to close the distance will determine if he can win. I also tweeted before the fight saying how Colby approaches the beginning of the fight will tell us how the fight will go. I put a lot of emphasis on this because I felt like that was the deciding factor of the fight. How will Colby Covington close the distance? Will he do it intelligently or not? And well, we had our answer. Hell to the nah. I said that Colby Covington and Usman are very similar on the feet. The only difference I would say is that Usman has a better jab, he throws more to the body, and he uses his kicks more. However, both of them like to swing wide with their shots. And for Colby Covington, he loves to close distance by ducking and chucking. This is how he draws his opponent's hands up by essentially causing chaos. And from there, he'll shoot and try to look for a takedown. That can work against guys like Robbie Lawler or Tyron Woodley, but against a guy like Leon who's a sharpshooter, you can't afford to do that, because Leon was effectively controlling distance and countering Colby the entire fight. Leon was so much faster and more precise than Colby on the feet. Even single straight punches where Colby was reaching with his shots, Leon shut it down completely. And ultimately, this is the answer to the question in the title. You might be confused because why would a guy like Leon Edwards, who doesn't normally finish fights or hurt people with his hands, make Colby Covington, a guy that is known to be super tough, fight the way that he did? People are saying that Usman was the one that took Colby's chin. People are referring to the fact that this is nothing new because against Colby in the rematch, early in the fight, if you remembered, Colby was fighting very timidly. In fact, Colby had more of a reason to fight the way that he did against Leon in the rematch against Usman. Colby got dropped twice against Usman, but he was much more offensive later in the fight and made it a very close decision. Leon at no point during the fight even hurt Colby once, yet he was so much more hesitant. And the reason for that is that he's getting hit with shots that he didn't see. Colby usually commits to his punches, and when Leon is pull countering it so fast that he can't see which shot he got hit with, it shocks him. Essentially, Leon took a page out of Devin Haney versus Regis Prograis. The shots that you don't see are the ones that affect you the most. Usman landed big shots on Colby, but he was able to see it and brace for it despite getting dropped. And on top of that, him getting countered is going to make him second guess himself when advancing. Same thing with the feints. If he keeps reacting to the feints, then he's not going to be able to push forward. He's essentially resetting every single time, and that's going to prevent him from getting going. How are you supposed to throw volume and push the pace? There were only two methods of how Colby tried to close down the distance. It was either a lead leg side kick or feinting low and coming up with a high kick. And those options, they're not bad, but they're also not good against a guy like Leon. You have to do much more than that. You have to come up with better ideas. There was only so much that he could do, like playing Rock'em Sock'em and throwing with him, but mentally, it looked like he didn't want to do that. He could have level changed and got under Leon's counter, but he wasn't capable of doing so. But on Leon's part, he didn't change his game plan in this fight. He fought the exact same as he did against Usman against Colby Covington. The only difference was that he was much more aggressive against Colby. He was countering Colby like how he did against Usman, except against Usman, there was more variety. In this fight, it was the same thing. He was using a variety of feints, the long range attacks were on display the whole fight, and even the footwork and movement were there too. The fight being in the center of the octagon is where Leon beats Colby every single time. He's a better striker than Colby on all levels. Long, mid, or short range fighting, and even clinch fighting, Leon does it better than Colby in all areas. Colby was getting hit with counter left hands and counter check hooks. He was landing kicks, but more specifically, he was chewing up that right leg from Colby. And that certainly played a factor into how hard Colby wanted to wrestle. And this is how I knew Leon could do what he did to Usman to Colby. A lot of people only remember the fact that Colby easily beat Jorge Masvidal in their fight, because at the time people hated Jorge. However, if you actually go back and watch that fight in depth, Jorge was having the same success as Leon. The leg kicks and body kicks were landing, and Jorge was finding a lot of openings on the back foot to counter Colby coming in. How do you think he took a knee for the first responders? Watch the sequence again. Jorge was looking for that shot the whole fight. And Jorge isn't known as a great counter striker. So if Jorge Masvidal can find those openings, what do you think a great counter striker like Leon is going to do? Enough said. So Leon did everything he needed to do on the feet, but he fought with his ego when he decided to grapple with Colby. It took Colby Covington to start wrestling until the third round. There were so many moments where Leon was trying to dominate positions and it led to him getting reversed. Obviously, he did a good job at hip escaping at times to get back up to his feet, And if we're being honest, Leon out-grappled Colby for the most part, but he decided to grapple with Colby just to prove that he could beat him in that category, which gave Colby some life in the fight. Or not really, but it just gave him opportunities to potentially pull something off, because he was losing that fight convincingly and he needed to pull a Leon against Leon. But overall, Leon made some crucial grappling mistakes late in the fight. The 5th round was the only round where it was a grappling heavy round. Leon almost secured an armbar, but almost isn't going to cut it. Either you lock it in and the fight's over, if not then he ends up on top of you. Whereas if you just kept the fight standing, there's no way in hell he'll beat you. Especially with the way that you're fighting. You're in control, he doesn't really want to initiate. And if you wanted to inflict damage, you could have done it. But when Colby was on top, it looked like Leon was content with just defending off of his back instead of trying to get back up to his feet. I'm not too sure if that's a sign of fatigue or if he doesn't want to give Colby any opportunities to advance. If you look at the striking numbers in this fight, surprisingly, Colby had one round where he outlanded Leon. But that's not what I'm concerned about. I'm looking at the consistency within Leon's output. And Leon had pretty low output to end the fight. And that could be due to, once again, fatigue, which is concerning. That's the only reason why everybody had Colby winning, was because they looked at Leon's conditioning and said that it was a deficiency. Or it could just be the way Leon approached the fight by being very selective and working off being second the whole fight. All in all, to summarize both guys' performance, Colby Covington had the worst performance of his career. Why? Well, it's because he didn't try. It's a world title fight. This is your 3rd shot. You're likely not going to get another one. This one was handed to you. You talked a big game talking about you were going to do this and that, dragging him to 7th layer hell, and instead it was just you not wanting to win. Like, it was such a bizarre performance that his stock dropped immensely. The crowd turned on him. Former President Donald Trump walked out on his post-fight interview. Like, at least if he would have tried and got knocked out in the process, more people would have actually given him more respect than the performance that he just put up last week. So for Colby, this is a bad look, like a very bad look for him. For Leon, he did what he had to do. It was a sharp performance in my opinion because he chose to stay disciplined to a game plan and he nullified everything that Colby wanted to do. But make no mistake about it, this was not an exciting performance by any means. This was a tactical performance, but it's not what the fans want to see. There was not one moment where Leon opened up to try to finish the fight. And he could have. He had many opportunities to do it. This was pretty much sparring for Leon. And I understand that the more you open up, the more you'll be vulnerable, so you're just content with outpointing him to a decision. However, you risk the fight being boring by fighting that way. Leon Edwards is a boring fighter, but that's not a bad thing because good fighting is boring. That's just how it is. You gotta please the hardcore fans and the casuals. That's how you become a superstar. People aren't paying $70, $80 or whatever it is to see two guys just not fight. They want to see violence. But Leon, he's a decision fighter. He actually draws a lot of comparisons to Israel Adesanya and how they approach a fight. But what I don't like is the fact that people are trying to say Izzy was a boring champion, but Leon goes to more decisions than Izzy. They blamed Colby for the fight being boring, but gave Leon a pass. But when Izzy's opponents don't do enough to win the fight, Izzy gets completely bashed for it. So what are we doing? If you're going to try to make being boring a bad term, at least be consistent with how you label fighters that are boring. And that is it, guys. Thank you guys so much for listening to what I have to say, and let me know, who is next for Leon Edwards after a dominant performance over Colby Covington? Is Colby Covington on the verge of being on a decline? Drop a comment and let me know in the comment section down below. Now, if you guys enjoy content that is related to combat sports, please drop a like on this video and subscribe to my YouTube channel down below. That would be greatly appreciated. And make sure you head down to the description of this video to follow my Twitter. And other than that, it's been Steven, signing out. Peace.